3 disturbing true camping horror stories. Prepare to have your nightmares haunted by these chilling tales. Watch to the end and share in the comments. Story 1, The Midnight Intruders. I used to love camping until that disturbing day where it all changed. I loved being able to get away from it all. I loved the serenity of nature and how the forest comes alive with sounds. My name is Ethan Caldwell, and I used to crave that feeling. I thought it made me stronger, braver. But after my last solo camping trip, I've sworn never to return to the woods. What I experienced out there was beyond fear. It makes my skin crawl even now. I have never been the same. This is the story that keeps me up at night. It was late fall, and I had driven out to a remote campsite in the Appalachian foothills. The road was narrow and winding, with no sign of civilization for miles. That was part of the appeal. I wanted to escape the chaos of city life and clear my head. As I pulled into the clearing, the trees seemed to close in around me, their bare branches reaching like skeletal fingers against the gray sky. It was perfect, or so I thought. After setting up my tent and gathering firewood, I sat by the fire with a mug of coffee, watching the flames dance. The silence was comforting at first, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves. But as the hours stretched on, the quiet began to feel oppressive, like the forest was holding its breath. I shook off the unease and told myself I was imagining things. Around midnight, I caught a flicker of light in the distance. My first thought was that it was another camper, but this area was so remote that it seemed unlikely. The light bobbed and swayed, growing brighter as it approached. I turned off my lantern and crouched by the fire in terror, trying to stay hidden. The light stopped about 100 yards away, and I could make out 3 figures wearing headlamps. They stood motionless, staring in the direction of my campsite. My heart was racing, but I stayed as still as I could, hoping they would leave. Instead, they started moving toward me, their steps slow and deliberate. I scrambled back into the shadows, hiding behind a tree as the intruders entered my campsite. They moved with eerie precision, rifling through my belongings and tossing them aside. One of them picked up my hatchet, inspecting it like a butcher sizing up a knife. Another began carving strange symbols into the dirt with a long, curved blade. I felt a cold sweat break out on my skin. Staying low, I crept away from the campsite, each step feeling like it took an eternity. A branch snapped underfoot, and all 3 headlamps snapped in my direction. They started running toward me. I bolted, adrenaline coursing through my veins as I zigzagged through the forest, trying to throw them off. The beams of their lights danced wildly behind me, growing closer with every step. I ducked behind a large fallen tree, pressing myself against the ground and trying to control my ragged breathing. The headlamps passed by, their beams cutting through the dark like searchlights. I stayed there for what felt like hours, too terrified to move. When I finally mustered the courage to peek out, the forest was silent again, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still being watched. I didn't need to be told twice. I've never camped again since. Every so often, I'll dream of those headlamps, bobbing through the trees, and I'll wake up drenched in sweat. I don't think I'll ever feel safe in the woods again.
It was early spring, and my friends Logan, Mia, and I had planned a weekend getaway to Sawtooth Lake. The drive was long, and the hike to the campsite was even longer, but the view was worth it. crystal clear water surrounded by towering peaks, with not another soul in sight. We set up our tents, built a fire, and spent the evening laughing and swapping stories. Around midnight, the fire had burned low, and we decided to turn in. As I crawled into my sleeping bag, I felt that familiar sense of contentment. But that feeling didn't last long. I woke up to a rustling sound outside my tent. It was faint at first, like leaves being disturbed by the wind, but it grew louder and more deliberate. I sat up, my heart racing. "Logan," I whispered. "Do you hear that?" Before he could answer, Mia's voice cut through the darkness. "There's something out there." We unzipped our tents and shone our flashlights into the trees. The forest was unnervingly still, and the sound had stopped. Logan shrugged it off, but Mia and I were uneasy. We decided to stoke the fire and stay up for a while, just in case. Louder and closer. Footsteps circled our campsite, stopping and starting as if whoever, or whatever it was toying with us. We huddled by the fire, too scared to sleep. At one point, I thought I saw a pair of glowing eyes in the darkness, but they vanished before I could be sure.